Alright, sorry about that. So, I've already arranged my jars and everything. I've got my scale here. And so what I'm going to do is keep this stirred, because those essential oils, they like to kind of float on top of the surface of whatever you're working with. So it's really important to keep everything stirred really well. Oh, sorry. I'm not sure if you're going to get that or not, but right now this is very loose. This is what you would think of kind of as lotion. It's a little bit thicker than lotion. But once see, it's still really warm right now. Once it cools to room temperature, and especially once it's refrigerated, it's going to thicken up quite a bit. And so looks can be deceiving at this point, because it looks like a lotion, but it's really a cream. And the excess that was on here, like a lot of the excess, I actually rubbed it off already onto my wrist where I was having those issues. I don't know if you can see the shininess or not, but like right here, it didn't absorb all the way yet. And that's why it's an overnight cream. Sometimes it really takes a long time for this to absorb. It depends on how dry your skin is. If you're really, really dry, it will absorb quickly. So I'm just going to turn this scale on, but first I'm going to put my first jar on there. And then I'm going to push the on button. And right now it's reading 0 ounces. And so you just give it a final stir. And depending on how thick it is, you may just have to spoon it down in there. Let's see if I can get this properly. And what you want to do is when you're filling it, you want to kind of push it down to the bottom. You don't really want a lot of air trapped in the jars. And so as you're filling it, you can kind of just push it down to make it settle. I know that was loud, but that's necessary, and that's what I have to go through when I'm doing this. I tap the jars a lot just to push the air out. And right now, see, it's not so fluffy. So right now I'm actually reading 3 ounces. But I've recently reformulated my lotion, and so it's not quite as fluffy and thick. I added a little bit more water, and so the texture is just a little bit different. But ooh, see? I'm over 3.5 ounces. And the last time I made this, before I made the changes, I could only get like 2.5, 3 ounces. So that's 3.5 ounces right there. And so just push it down in there as much as you can. You can kind of see that there are little pockets of air. And that's not really desirable, but sometimes I mean, if you tap too hard on these glass jars, you're going to break them. So I do have to be careful. But my scale, you can't see that right now, but my scale says negative 0.05. And so when it does that, it just means you have a cheap scale. And so when you put your new jar on there, well, it's not necessarily a cheap scale, because each jar can weigh slightly different. But when you put a new jar on the scale, just if it doesn't read 0, push that tear button. And unfortunately, this is a very cheap scale. I'm going to have to turn it off and turn it back on. Okay, now it's reading 0. So just make sure your scale is reading 0 if you're actually wanting to keep track of how much lotion you've made by weight. If you don't care, then you don't have to weigh it out. Just throw it in the jars and use it. I only weigh it out because this was a business prospect. And so I actually needed to know the exact weight. And I just like to keep it consistent, you know, from jar to jar, even if I'm just giving it to friends. I like to be consistent about it. So that's a little tiny bit over. I'm kind of a perfectionist, if you hadn't noticed. And I like the scale because I can be very precise. There we go, 3.5 ounces. And I just keep scraping down the spatula with my knife. And keep stirring it after, or before you do each jar. Give it a quick stir and make sure that none of the essential oils have risen and separated. It's kind of a loud job. I apologize for all this noise. Alright. If you can, just push it down and just keep filling your jars until you don't have any more left. These are specialty jars that you can't buy just anywhere. So if I did not have these, which I'm probably not going to have in the future, I will just use canning jars. And that will be perfectly fine. You can also just kind of hit it against your hand if you want to be quiet about it. I've been doing this at 3 o'clock in the morning in the house before and had to be quiet, so that's how I get around it. I'm able to settle that down without being too loud. I thought I was going to need all these jars, but I'm not going to need them all. Again, the density kind of depends on the amount of water you use, how much oil you use. So your recipe, however you formulate it, it's going to yield a different amount. And like for me, it yields a different amount almost every time I make it. I'm not quite sure why. Sometimes I change the recipe and so I know that the yield will be different. But other times I don't even really change the recipe and the yield is different. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I know I've had TBI, traumatic brain injury, for quite some time. Many, many years, but still, you would think that it would be a little bit more consistent, or that I would be more consistent. I don't know. But yeah, I'm getting down to pretty much nothing. And I don't like to waste anything, so I'm trying to get absolutely every drop out of there. And to use my knife to scrape it down in there. See, I normally get more jars than this. And I think it's because I thinned it down a little bit that I'm yielding different amounts of jars, but it's the same per weight. The weight is the same, but it's fitting in a different amount of jars, if that makes any sense. So if you want a thicker cream, you don't add as much water. If you want to thin it down a little bit, you would add more of the water portion. There's not much left in there. I don't leave a lot. And whatever's on the spatula, I just start rubbing it on my hands and stuff. I'm not going to do that right now because I still have to touch the camera. And my hands are already lotiony enough as it is. So that's 3.15 ounces. So I've got, you know, 3 of the jars that were 3.5 ounces. So that's 9, 10 and a half, 13. So yeah, that's about right. That's about how much I normally get, is about 13 to 14 ounces. But normally it's in more jars. So the consistency really does dictate how many jars you're going to use. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but my hands are getting greasy. And I don't waste anything. Like, I have so many dry body parts in the winter that I don't have to waste anything. Anything that's on my hands, I just rub it on my arms and my elbows. The backs of my hands are always pretty dry. But this is an overnight cream, and even when you do that, I mean, unless you're like really spreading it like on your legs and everything, you're still going to have this kind of shiny film. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. Sorry again for the rain. The rain's really picking up now. So always keep your paper towels handy so that you can at least wipe the palms of your hands. You don't have to worry about the backs of your hands because that will eventually soak in. But just to be able to touch something, you need your palms dry and not greasy. And this stuff is very oily. Like I said, I use a lot of heavy oils on purpose because this is an overnight cream designed specifically to be very healing, and it takes a long time to soak in. So every jar I will wipe the rim down because you're going to have lotion on the rim. And then these will go in the refrigerator. And what I think I'm going to do for one last clip is I'm going to put most of these in the refrigerator, and then I'm going to leave one out. And here in about a day or so, I'm going to make another clip, and I'm going to show you the difference between refrigerated cream and non-refrigerated, because that is very smooth and light right now, it seems, but once you put it in the refrigerator, it thickens up quite a bit. But this has to be kept in the refrigerator because there's just, you know, a few natural preservatives, that vitamin E and my essential oils, but I'm not using enough of the vitamin E or the essential oils for them to be classified as preservatives. So this has to be kept in the refrigerator, and it's kind of uncomfortable in the winter when you're getting refrigerated hand cream out of, and you're trying to put it on and you're already cold. But if your skin gets as bad and dry and cracked as mine does, then it won't matter what temperature it is. You're just going to want to put it on because it does help. This will take about a week to clear up, using it about once a day. If I wanted to go quicker, I would do it twice a day. So here we go. And I'll leave that one out. I think that's the one I'll leave out, that stray one. And I'll show you the difference between what it is now and what it becomes once you put it in the refrigerator. Alrighty, I'll see you then. Okay guys, so it's actually been almost a week later, and I wanted to show you what these look like now. This is the one that's been sitting out at room temperature. It really needs to go in the refrigerator now. The only reason I've been able to keep it out for a week is because it's winter time. and it's only like 64 or 65 in here in the garage. And this one's the one that's been kept in the refrigerator. And so you can see there's a little bit of a difference. It's not a huge difference, but if you saw this in real life, you'd be able to see it better. But you can tell how it's pretty thick, and it's slow to come off of there. So that's definitely cream. It's not lotion, because a lotion you can put in a pump bottle or whatever, and this stuff is just too thick. But it's a nice consistency. I really like it. But then when you put it in the refrigerator, it does thicken up a little bit more than that. And above all else, it's just really cold. And that's not very fun to use in the winter, but because there's no preservatives in here, I really have to do that. If I keep it out of the refrigerator, it would be moldy in probably 2 weeks. 3 weeks maybe in the winter, but 2 weeks definitely in the summer. And so there's just no way that this is room temperature lotion or cream. And if you don't like that, then you probably shouldn't make your own creams. You might as well just buy whatever at the store, you know. The whole point of this is to avoid chemical preservatives and everything. So this is the one that's been in the fridge. And there's not much of a difference. Actually, it doesn't want to come off the thing, but the other stuff doesn't either. But this would just take a little bit longer, I think. If I didn't sit there and force it, yeah, it's not going anywhere. So it does thicken up, but that's what you want, and it doesn't take very much. I'll show you about how much I use. If I was taking a nap during the day and had a couple hours to where I didn't have to touch anything, and I was only doing my hands, I would literally only use just that small amount, or even less. But at night, I also, I put it on the backs of my hands, and I go down my wrist and my elbows, and then I also do my feet at night if they're dry. And so I'll use more like that much, which again is not very much. A little bit goes a long way. It does spread out, and it's really thick and luxurious and creamy. So that's what it looks like when you're in the refrigerator. And I just wanted to mention that the real reason why this batch is holding more by weight in the jar, it's not actually because I changed the recipe that much, because I only added, a little bit more water to that recipe. What the real difference is that I'm not used to, that I'm going to have to get used to, is that the food processor actually creates a more fluffy cream than that immersion blender. The immersion blender it's not quite the same. I'm sure you could see what was happening when I was making it and everything. That's not how it looks when you're doing it in the food processor. So I guess you should just keep in mind that if you use the immersion blender to do this, that you can expect a more dense cream or lotion. And again, it's really cold when you take it out of the refrigerator and it's wintertime and you are trying to go to bed and your hands are already cold. It's kind of uncomfortable. But I just put it right there in the palm of my hand, and I'll sit there, and try to let it warm up a little bit, and then I'll put my hands together and warm it up a little bit more, and then I'll do all that, and then I'll do my feet, and by the time you're starting to rub it all in, it does start to warm up, so it's not uncomfortable all the time. And then what I like to do, especially if you've put a lot of really nice essential oils in here like I've done, is I will take my hands, once I'm done, I'll take my hands and cup them over my nose, because it's good aromatherapy for, depending on which essential oils you use. If you use some really nice calming ones and you're using this at night, it's nice to just cup your hands and put it over your face and breathe in real deeply, and it will help relax you and help you get to sleep. I think that was it, everybody. Hopefully this didn't kill you with boredom. I know this was really long, but again, it's not a quick 1 hour job here, but I think it's worth it. And if you guys want to make stuff without preservatives, then you will probably want to go through this kind of hassle too. And actually, it's not really a hassle to me because I like to do it. It is time consuming and everything, but I could never go back to store-bought lotions and balms after this, after making my own and using my own for years like this. There's no way I could go back to the other, so it's worth it to me. Alright guys, talk to you later. Have a good one. Alright, so as I was editing this video, I realized that I forgot to show you my wrist. And while it's been a week since I made the lotion, I haven't been able to use it every single night, so it's probably been like 4 or 5 nights instead of 7. But already, I'm not sure how well this is going to pick up on the camera, but I can feel it and I can see it in real life. Already, it's not as red and it's not as scaly, and it's not near as dry. It's a little bit dry right now, but it's late at night and it's getting about time for me to use my cream again. I hope this is showing up. It might not be, but compared to when I first started out, this is definitely an improvement, and it will just continue to get better. And right back here on this hand, that's kind of just scarring, you know, from old stuff. And that'll go away after I use it for a couple weeks or whatever. Alrighty, just wanted to show you that. Take it easy.